My husband won $8 million in the lottery, then immediately told me he wanted a divorce. I packed my things and got the hell out of there without a second thought. I knew what was coming. The end of the world was near, and a blizzard would soon ravage every corner of the city. Later, hiding out in our family's country house, I was eating a great meal when I watched a video of my ex-husband and my best friend cooking and eating their own child. It brought me right back to my past life, to the moment those two carved me up and ate me. This time, without me to sustain them, let's see how they managed to survive until the end. I was reborn. It was the day Kevin was in the living room, shouting about divorcing me. I swallowed my all-consuming hatred and agreed on the spot. He didn't expect me to give in so easily. He hesitated. You really agreed to a divorce? You're not screwing with me, are you? I glanced at the time. September 12, 2025. There were only 15 days until the disaster hit. I didn't have time to argue with him, so I just went with it. I do. Let's do it right now. I can go to the courthouse this second, but I'm taking all the cash we have in the bank. As we drove, the man behind the wheel couldn't hide the smug look on his face. I fought the urge to kill him right then and there, but the memory of my past life, the feeling of his kitchen knife slicing across my neck, flashed in my mind. A flicker of pure malice crossed my eyes. Kevin. Linda. I swear, you will pay for what you did in blood. Because of the state's mandatory cooling-off period, all we could do at the courthouse today was file the initial paperwork and divide the assets. We'd have to come back in 30 days to get the final divorce decree. On the way out, Kevin tried to act all magnanimous. See how good I am to you. I gave you all the assets. I'm walking away with nothing. I shot back with a sneer. You were the one at fault. You were sleeping with my best friend Linda, behind my back, and even had a kid with her. You have some nerve. Besides, I left you the house, didn't I? All I took was the $250,000 in savings and the pickup truck. You got off easy, so don't act like you did me a favor. Well, I wouldn't mind giving you the house. We were married, after all. He wasn't faking his generosity. He thought I didn't know, but I was fully aware he'd won the lottery. After taxes, he still had over $8 million. He was trying to get rid of me so he could keep it all for himself. In my past life, I was completely clueless. I even tried to save our marriage. It wasn't until he moved Linda and their child into our home that I finally understood what was happening. What was worse, the two of them had been together even before we got married. The child was born while we were husband and wife. For years, I felt sorry for Linda, thinking how hard it must be for her as a single mom. I'd even bring Kevin over to her place to help out. I never imagined that I was the clown in this circus the entire time. When the disaster hit, the three of them were trapped in the house with me. After we ran out of food, they finally turned on me. While I was asleep, one held me down while the other slit my throat with a kitchen knife. They drank my blood and ate my flesh. It was beyond brutal. I didn't die immediately. My fading consciousness was forced to watch what these two monsters were doing to me. This blood tastes so metallic. Can you really drink it? Of course. What else are we going to drink? And look at this meat. So tender. Good thing I kept her well fed all these years, so she could finally pay us back, right? We still have gas, so let's get a pot going. Hearing those soulless words, I finally stopped breathing. So how could I not hate them? I don't want the house. In a world buried in snow, a house that wasn't reinforced was useless. Besides, the house Kevin and I had was a piece of junk, shoddy construction that was barely livable under normal circumstances, let alone during an apocalypse. If anyone with bad intentions showed up, it offered zero protection. Since I died there in my last life, this time, that house was going to be Kevin and Linda's tomb. After we left the courthouse, I drove the pickup truck home and immediately started packing. The great thing about a pickup is its cargo space. If I was leaving, I wasn't leaving anything useful behind. The things I brought into the marriage, all the thick comforters, thin blankets, and quilts, all of it came with me. I packed my clothes for all 4 seasons, and I didn't leave any of Kevin's winter clothes behind either. From the kitchen, I grabbed all my favorite instant meals, ramen noodles, everything. I packed it all, leaving nothing behind. After practically gutting the place, I found a few discreet spots and installed hidden cameras before making my clean getaway. As I was starting the truck, I saw Kevin arriving with Linda and their child. They didn't stay long, just grabbed a few light clothes and left, so they didn't notice anything was amiss inside. In my previous life, on the same day we filed for divorce, Kevin went straight to claim his lottery prize. He booked plane tickets on the spot and took his new family on an international vacation. The three of them were gone for 15 days. By the time they returned, the catastrophic freeze had just begun. Last time, Kevin tricked me into picking them up from the airport. On the way back, it was freezing. Kevin didn't care that I was driving. He ripped my coat right off me and put it on Linda and her kid. His rough movement almost caused an accident. Instead of blaming himself, he put it all on me, forced me to pull over, and beat me senseless on the side of the road. Even their child, a boy I had treated like my own, took the opportunity to walk up and slap me across the face. So no, I wasn't being cruel. They were just reaping what they sowed. I got in the pickup and drove through the night back to my parents' house in the countryside. It wasn't too far, less than an hour on the highway. The second I saw my mom and dad, the tears started to fall. In my last life, after the freeze hit, all the lines froze. With the water, power, and internet all down, I never managed to contact my aging parents before I died. I had no idea if they survived that long disaster. And if they did, how would they have handled the news of their daughter's death? But it was okay. I was back, and I wouldn't let any of that happen again. Seeing me cry, my parents panicked and started asking what was wrong. After some hesitation, I told them everything, the coming disaster and how I was murdered. My mom stood at the door, tears streaming down her face as she cursed Kevin's entire family tree. My dad was so furious he grabbed a knife, ready to go chop that bastard into pieces. Son of a bitch. That Kevin is a real piece of work. How could they do that to you? If they were together before you got married, why didn't they just stay together? Did they have to be so damn sneaky about it? I managed a small smile. Some people just can't stand the light of day. They love doing shady stuff. But the focus now isn't them. It's reinforcing the house and stocking up on supplies to make sure our family is safe when it hits. My dad put down the axe, and my mom wiped her tears. They were silent for a moment. Then my mom spoke up. The house doesn't really need much work. It's newly built. You know how I love scrolling through TikToks? It's all apocalypse and disaster videos these days. So when we built the house, I spent a little extra on bulletproof glass and reinforced security bars. My dad added, the gate is a double-layer security door. Even a SWAT team would have a hard time getting through it quickly. And your mom even had me run an electric current through the fence. My mom laughed. When I wanted to do all this, your dad said I was wasting money. Well, look at us now. Honey, that's not all. We built a secret basement. Didn't tell a soul in the village. It's empty though. I was stunned and thrilled to hear my parents' incredible revelations. Mom, Dad, this is amazing. Then a thought struck me, and I asked hesitantly, but do you guys really believe me? Maybe it was just a nightmare. What if this is all for nothing and none of it happens? My dad waved it off. If nothing happens, that's a good thing. And all this stuff you're talking about buying won't go to waste. Your mom has always wanted to stockpile supplies just in case. If we actually get to use it, it'll be her dream come true. As my dad sighed in resignation, my mom and I excitedly started drafting a supplies list. Our house was right in the middle of the village. Although everyone had built new homes, none were as solid as ours. It was a 3-story house with a large yard. One side of the yard was a dedicated parking area, and the other was a small vegetable patch where we grew greens we ate regularly. Fortunately, the village was mostly empty. Aside from a few elderly folks who refused to leave, my mom used to say you couldn't even get enough people for a game of mahjong. So in our own village, we were relatively safe. Once the disaster hits and the snow blocks the roads, our remote location would make it hard for people from other villages to get to us. Coming back here was definitely the right choice. Using lists we found online, we finished our supply plan in no time. But then my parents looked at me, a little embarrassed. Honey, because the house is new and we spent so much on it, we don't have a lot of cash on hand. My mom fiddled with her phone for a moment, And then I received a transfer of $130,000 from her. Mom, that's a lot. I have the $250,000 from the divorce, and I've got a little under $100,000 in my own savings. Altogether, that's almost $500,000. I tried to reassure them, we're facing a natural disaster, not a zombie apocalypse. It'll end eventually. A year? 2 years. No matter how long it takes, I believe the country won't abandon anyone. Once they get through the initial chaos, they'll start rescue operations. All we have to do is survive the first phase, and we'll be okay. Hearing that, my parents finally relaxed. My hometown is in Newtown, a small county right next to the bigger city of Jiangcheng. Newtown has all the basics, and buying a few things wouldn't raise eyebrows, but buying in bulk would be a problem. When it came to buying supplies, my dad immediately laid out a plan. Heating equipment doesn't break easily, and we don't need a lot of it, so we can buy that here in town. But for food, we should go to Jiangcheng. $500,000 might not seem like a lot, but it buys a mountain of stuff. If we buy too much here, we'll attract unwanted attention. I had the same idea. I was planning on going to Jiangcheng anyway. They'll have a better selection. Plus, I'm going to rent a warehouse between the two cities. We can store everything there first, and then I can bring it back here bit by bit at night. That way, no one in the village will notice. My parents agreed with my cautious approach. Exactly. Most of the people in our village are in their 60s and 70s, and we all get along fine. But in a real crisis, if they knew we had all those supplies, it would be hard to avoid resentment. What happens when they ask us to share or want to buy from us? Do you sell or not? My dad lit a cigarette and took a few drags, nodding in agreement with my mom. I see you've listed a lot of fresh food, meat, fish, shrimp. We have one fridge in the kitchen, but it's too small. We have a spare chest freezer, but that probably won't be enough either, and it's still hot out. How about this? When I go buy the heating equipment, I'll pick up 2 more chest freezers. They're cheap these days, you can get a good one for a few $100. Okay, you two have it all planned. In that case, I'll harvest the vegetables from the garden, my mom said. We don't know how long this will last, and getting vitamins is important. I'll also buy some potatoes, sweet potatoes, turnips, and cabbage that store well. We can keep them in the basement. That should last us a good long while. With our tasks assigned, night had fallen. After a simple dinner, the 3 of us went to bed. The next morning, we all got up and started our missions. My dad was the first one out. He drove the family's small 3-wheeled utility vehicle to the market in Newtown and pointed at all the different heating and power generation units in the store, ordering 2 or 3 of each. Delivery wasn't included, so after paying, he made 3 trips back and forth to get everything home. By the time he was done, the 2 new chest freezers were already set up in the basement and plugged in. My mom was the second to leave. The vegetables are freshest in the morning. Even though we live in the countryside where people grow their own, we still have a farmer's market with a wider variety than any home garden. But since it was still early in the prepping stage, my mom didn't buy too much at once. She just planned to add a little more to our stock each day. As for me, even though I was on the highway by 7 a.m., I was technically the last one to leave. I drove my pickup toward Jiangcheng, feeling a little sheepish. Looks like I'm the laziest one in the family. At 7:48 a.m., I arrived at the wholesale market. I bought a variety of fresh meats, getting about 30 to 50 pounds of each kind. I had to transport this myself, so it had to be done during the day. It took 2 full days, making 3 to 4 trips each day, but I finally got it all into the freezers before it could spoil. With the fresh food handled, I rented the warehouse and headed to the bulk food market. Since we were on a tight budget, our goal was clear. Stick to common filling foods. Staples, rice, white flour, etc. 20 bags of each, 40 pounds per bag. Seasonings, oil, salt, sugar, etc. 20 cases of each. Instant canned goods, dried noodles, ramen, spam, canned meat, canned fruit, and emergency biscuits. These were essentials with long shelf lives. I bought 30 cases of each. Then came the indispensable paper towels and feminine hygiene products, enough for over a year for our family. Finally, water. I bought 10,000 half-liter bottles. That wouldn't be nearly enough for 3 people, but by then, my money was running low. I figured it would be more cost-effective to use the last of the money on water storage tanks while our tap water was still safe, rather than buying more bottled water. Once all the supplies were delivered to the warehouse, I began my multi-day mission of secretly hauling everything back home at night. It wasn't until 3 days before the disaster was set to hit that I finally finished. Just as I was congratulating myself for pulling this off for so many days without any villagers noticing, the 2 huge custom-ordered water tanks my dad bought were delivered by a work crew. The commotion from that, even before they started the installation, brought the village head straight to our door. What have you all been so busy with lately? There's noise every night, and we've seen Chloe bringing things home by the truckload for days. Now you've got these 2 giant tanks. His words left our whole family stunned. My dad quickly asked, "How did you know, sir?" "It's not just me, the whole village knows. Old folks are light sleepers. You've been quiet at night, but not completely silent. People hear something, they get up and take a look. You're busy at night and sleeping during the day, so nobody had a chance to ask. That's why I'm here now." Well, that was awkward. I looked at my dad. My mom looked at my dad. My dad thought for a moment before finally speaking. "Well, sir, I won't hide it from you. My daughter heard a rumor in the city that the weather is about to change, that it's going to get extremely cold. So we're just getting ready for winter." The village head didn't seem too surprised. Hot summers mean cold winters. It's been like that for years now. But it's only August. Isn't this a bit early? Since my dad had already started, I decided to chime in. "It's not like that, sir. This cold is going to be different. I heard this from someone who works for a government agency. It might just be a rumor, but I don't think it's fake. If you trust me, you should get some heating equipment and stock up on food too." The village head was about to refuse, but then he thought about the scale of our preparations. After a moment's hesitation, he agreed. "All right, we'll need it for winter anyway. Just getting it early. How about this, Chun? I'll ask around the village and see what everyone needs. We can all go buy things together. Your truck has plenty of space. Would you mind making a trip for the village?" Of course. After the village head left, my mom was confused. "Honey, why did you tell him everything? What if, you know what they say, in an apocalypse, the first to die are the bleeding hearts? Aren't you being one right now?" "If he hadn't asked, I wouldn't have said a word," my dad replied. "But he came to us. It's just a bunch of old folks in this village. It's not like they can cause much trouble. I'd feel guilty for the rest of my life if I just watched them die. People would blame us. It's better to give them a heads up now. If they don't listen, then it's not on us." My mom and I looked grim, but what was done. It was too late to take it back. I tried to console her. It's the classic story of being a target, because you have something others want. If we're the only family in the village with supplies, we'll be villains the second it gets out. But if every house has something, then if a problem comes up, it can't be blamed on me. I remember before I died, the blizzard had already buried the first floor of buildings. Forget the elderly, even young people couldn't get outside. So as long as everyone makes it through the beginning, we shouldn't be blamed for anything. That seemed to calm my mom down a bit, but she still immediately took the 3-wheeler to the hardware store and secretly bought several axes, sickles, long poles, and knives, just in case. My dad watched her, speechless. "You've been watching too many apocalypse shows. People aren't that bad." "But human nature is the first thing to fail a test," she shot back. "Our daughter already died a horrible death once. Do you want to see that happen again?" My dad fell silent, and that was the end of that conversation. For the next 3 days, we were busy helping the villagers with their supply runs. The old folks were very cooperative. They had lived through hard times and understood the principle of a full pantry means a calm heart better than we did. Whether they believed the rumors or not, they knew stocking up on food was never a bad idea. And me? On the night before the world ended, I finally had a moment to scroll through my phone. For now, the internet was calm. Watching short videos gave me a brief moment of peace. But soon a notification popped up. Linda had tagged me in a video. Ever since her family went abroad, Linda had been posting over 10 videos a day, and she tagged me in every single one. The smugness was practically oozing from the screen. Since I'd been too busy to respond, she seemed to have gotten desperate and resorted to taunting me. Some people just aren't destined for the good life. Not like me, with a husband who takes me on international trips. In the comments, our mutual friends were a mix of people calling them out and people who were jealous. But I only focused on one thing. They were back today. I checked the date carefully, a question forming in my mind. They're back a day early? Why? Could my rebirth have caused a butterfly effect? If so, what if the disaster doesn't come, then But that worry was unnecessary. The temperature, which had been over 100 degrees during the day, suddenly plummeted in the middle of the night. A fierce wind howled like a stampede of wild horses, making it impossible to sleep. I quickly turned off the AC and went to the window. The blizzard had arrived right on schedule. The sudden drop in temperature made me shiver. I rushed to change into the thick winter clothes I'd prepared, then went to knock on my parents' door. Mom, Dad, the temperature's dropping. Wake up and put on more layers. The most terrifying thing about this disaster wasn't just the cold, but the speed of the temperature drop. From over 100 degrees Fahrenheit to nearly 15 below in an instant, and it was still falling. Even young people might not handle a swing of that magnitude, let alone the elderly villagers. My dad came out of his room in a hurry. I'll go get the village head, he said. We'll wake up the rest of the seniors together. My God, it's freezing. If you hadn't woken me, your mother and I would have probably frozen in our sleep. Dad, I'll go with you. No, it's too cold out. You stay here. My dad layered up in all his winter gear and rushed over to the village head's house. By the time they woke him up and started trying to rouse the other seniors, the temperature inside the houses had already dropped to 40 below. I kept an eye on the snowfall. In just half an hour, the snow was already ankle deep. Anxious, I checked my phone. Rumors about the end of the world were already starting to spread online. In that short time, I'd already seen several posts about people freezing to death. My mom was making ginger tea on the stove. She turned to me and said, "Stop looking at that stuff online. Go check on those too. Maybe they froze to death." Not a chance. The wicked live long lives. They didn't die last time, so they probably won't this time either. Even as I said it, I pulled up the feed from the cameras in the house. In the master bedroom, the child, shivering violently, was sobbing. "Daddy, Mommy, I'm cold. I'm so cold." Linda was both heartbroken and furious. That Chloe is such a piece of work. She took everything out of this house. If it weren't for her, our son wouldn't be freezing like this. Kevin agreed with her. Ignoring the time, he called me. "Chloe, have you no shame? Where are the thick blankets? Are you trying to freeze us to death?" I stirred some brown sugar into the ginger tea and chuckled. The thick blankets? Those were mine to begin with. Of course I took them when we divorced. What, you think I'd let Linda sleep with my husband and use my blankets? Do you take me for a total idiot? But you took all the winter clothes. What are we supposed to wear? What you wear has nothing to do with me. If you don't have clothes, I guess you'll just have to freeze. After that parting shot, I hung up and switched my phone to airplane mode. When I looked at the monitor again, Kevin was so enraged by my words that he threw his phone across the room. Linda was frantically trying to turn up the heat with the remote. But it was already 50 below zero. What good was a standard HVAC unit in this? "Kevin, when it gets light out, let's go buy some warm clothes," she said. "And food. There's nothing in the house. Everyone's probably going to be hoarding supplies. If we wait too long, we'll starve." Kevin shot her a glare. "You go if you want to. There isn't a single warm piece of clothing in this house. How are you going to get out? Besides, we have money. We can just pay a delivery service to bring it to us." As soon as dawn broke, Kevin, still oblivious to the severity of the situation, actually started ordering from a delivery app. But because of the extreme weather, no one was taking orders. Finally, after raising the delivery fee to $30,000, a driver finally accepted the job half an hour later. Due to the weather, it was still delayed by 3 hours before they got their stuff. When he saw the delivery driver, Kevin snapped, "You're way too slow. I'm definitely leaving you a 1-star review." He didn't even give the driver a chance to respond before slamming the door in his face. I pursed my lips and turned off the monitor. At a time like this, he's lucky anyone took his order at all, and he's still expecting on-time delivery. But that driver, he looks familiar. Shaking off the thought, I turned away from the screen just as my dad came back home. covered in snow. Dad, how are the village elders? My dad went to the coal stove to warm up. After a long moment, he finally spoke. The village head, me, and two of the younger guys went door to door all night. Good thing we started early. A lot of the seniors had passed out from the cold, but thankfully, everyone's okay. We got their stoves going, gave them some hot water, and made them some ginger tea. After that, it's in God's hands. My mom handed my dad a bowl of the ginger tea she'd made, then turned to me. Chloe, this storm isn't normal. Is it just going to keep snowing like this forever? If I remember correctly, the snow should lighten up tomorrow. It'll get to about mid-calf, and then stop for a day. But after that day, an even bigger blizzard will hit. When I died, the snow was about 1.5 stories high. You couldn't walk outside at all. My parents looked sad when I mentioned my death. My dad, after finishing his tea, asked, will there be any other dangers during that time? I thought for a moment. It's mainly about food and heat. There's nothing wrong with the snow itself. As long as everyone stays home, they should be fine. Hearing that, my dad finally let out a sigh of relief. We had plenty of food, but since it was still possible to walk outside, we didn't want anyone to see us eating too well. So breakfast was simple, tomato and egg noodles. I had just finished my bowl, and was about to get some more ginger tea when the village head arrived, pushing through the snow. Chin, are you home? It was his voice. I'm here. My dad called back. I hurried to open the door and let him in. Be careful, Chloe. It's slippery out there. I will. As soon as he was inside, the village head shook the snow off his coat and stood by the stove for a while before speaking. Chun, I really owe you one this time. If you hadn't come to my house to wake me, my whole family might have frozen to death. And the seniors in the village, anyway, thank you. It's nothing. We're all neighbors. I couldn't just stand by and watch people die. Besides, it was my daughter who was up all night and noticed the temperature drop. Otherwise, my wife and I probably would have passed out too. At the mention of me, the village head asked with a hint of suspicion, Chloe, I remember your dad saying you heard a rumor in the city that the weather was going to change? Yes, like I said before, it was a rumor I heard from someone at a government agency. That's why I rushed back to have my parents stock up, and I figured I should warn the village too. I quickly added, it's not that I didn't want everyone to stock up more beforehand. It's just that, it hadn't happened yet. Even my own parents took a few days to believe me. The village head asked me seriously, so what's next? How long will this blizzard last? Thanks to your warning, everyone has some supplies, but not a lot. If this goes on too long, I'm afraid people won't make it. I really don't know for sure. But if you ask me, while the roads are still visible, we should get out there and stock up on more. Food is more important than anything. The village head stood by the stove, hesitating for a long time before making a decision. Chin, can I trouble you to go out with me? I'll have my son drive one car, you drive another, and I'll borrow a third. We need to go to the nearby towns and buy as much food as we can. For heat, if people run out of coal, they can burn wood. But we can't run out of food. Since I had mentioned the storm would let up for a bit, my dad wasn't worried and agreed on the spot. You got it. As they were about to leave, I quickly added, you can't just drive out like that. I have some tire chains. It'll be much safer if you put those on first. Also, Dad, bring back a couple of gas cans. If we end up having to burn wood, gasoline will help get the fire started. Good idea. The cars need gas anyway. After watching my dad leave with the village head, my mom and I sat in the living room, warming ourselves by the fire and prepping the vegetables we had bought. My mom sighed regretfully. We still bought too much. There's no way we can eat all of this. I'm just worried it'll go bad, and we'll have to throw it out. What a waste. It won't be a waste. We can keep some fresh for now and pickle the rest. We've got plenty of salt. It'll be great with porridge. My mom thought about it for a second. That could work. The cabbage and bok choy can be pickled. The eggplant and lotus root, let's fry them. Fried vegetables last longer. In this cold, we can just leave them outside. Oh, and I can make some dough. We can use the cabbage to make dumplings. I knew their supply run would take a while, but I didn't expect them to be gone until after the snow stopped falling. The one good thing was that all 3 vehicles came backpacked to the brim. They had even tied supplies to the roofs with rope. Before I could even get a good look, my dad came in like he was presenting a prize, carrying several boxes of cherries. Chloe loves these. They're usually too expensive, so we only get them as a treat. But with the cold, nobody's buying them, so the market was having a huge sale. Guess how much a box was? $30. I bought 5 boxes. My mom chided him. Those don't keep well, and you can't eat too many in one day. They're all going to spoil. They won't spoil. We can make jam, right? Besides, Chloe likes frozen fruit. We can pit them, freeze them solid, and eat them like popsicles. My eyes suddenly felt hot. I blinked hard, managing to hold back the tears. The brief pause in the storm was humanity's last chance to catch its breath. Everyone took the opportunity to shovel the snow in front of their homes. The village head did his best to distribute the food to every household. By the time it was all done, another day had passed. Lying in bed, I curiously opened the camera feed to see how Kevin and Linda were doing. I never would have expected it. The kitchen and living room were a complete mess, and the 3 of them, after changing into the clothes the delivery guy brought, were just lying in bed again. Whether they've eaten or not, those 2 clearly have no intention of stocking up. The days ahead are going to be rough for them. But if things were rough for them, I was perfectly happy. Outside my window, the howling wind returned. Listening to its sharp, demonic shriek, I pulled the covers over my head and fell into a peaceful sleep. When I woke up, the blizzard had indeed returned with a vengeance after its short break. Overnight, the snow that we had just cleared was already up to our knees. While it was still possible to get out, the village head made an announcement over the broadcast system every half hour, telling everyone to stay inside and to contact him if they needed anything. But being stuck at home is always boring. When my mom called me down for lunch, I opened up the camera feed from Kevin's place again. One glance was enough to make my blood run cold. Linda had been hit in the head and was bleeding profusely. She was clinging to Kevin's leg, screaming and crying. And Kevin? He was stirring a large pot with a spatula. In that pot, a child was boiling. His eyes were bloodshot and wide open in an eternal stare. Looking closely at the child's face, I realized it was their son Alex. Ugh, I couldn't hold it back and ran to the door gagging. My parents saw me and rushed over. Honey, what's wrong? My mom sensed something was off and picked up my phone to look. I couldn't stop her in time. A second later, she was right next to me, throwing up. My dad was completely confused. What is wrong with you two? When he reached for the phone, I cried out, "Don't look." But it was too late. The 3 of us stood there retching together. My mom, after catching her breath, said with disgust, "That man, he's not human. Whose child is that? It's only been a few days, and he's already catching children to cook them? With that kind of effort, couldn't he have gone out to buy some food?" "That's his own son," I said. "You might not be able to tell from the video, but I'm sure of it. That's his son." Even my dad couldn't help but say, "That's just monstrous. The man is a monster. If he could do what he did to me in my last life, it's no surprise he'd do it again now that he has no supplies." But I never thought the first person he'd turn on would be his own child. Listening to my calm analysis, my mom's eyes suddenly turned red. "My baby, is that what happened to you?" "Mom, it's over. I'm back now, aren't I? Once the storm passes, I'll send the video to the police. He's going to prison, and for a crime like this, he's never getting out." The video was so disturbing that we didn't eat any meat for 2 days. A 3-year-old child isn't something you can finish in a day or 2. On the 4th day, I had my mom cook a big pot of pork ribs. Not only did I enjoy a great meal, but I also sent a picture to Kevin to provoke him. Of course, my phone was still on airplane mode, and I was logged out of every app he could use to contact me. Unable to find a target for his rage, Kevin turned on Linda. After beating her senseless, he leaned in and whispered something in her ear. With a look of disbelief on her face, she was thrown out of the house. I was confused. What's this? This didn't happen last time. Then it hit me. Last time, I was the one being eaten. I was already dead. How would I know what happened next? An hour later, Linda returned, looking even more disheveled than before. Her down jacket had several new rips, and her eyes and mouth were bruised. She looked at Kevin with resentment, then pulled out 2 packs of ramen from inside her coat. Now this is interesting. Where did she get ramen? The mom's group. That's it. After thinking it over, I logged into a messaging app one hadn't used in ages. Ignoring the messages from my friends, I found the neighborhood moms group chat. It was a private group for the women in the apartment complex, mostly used for gossip, complaining about in-laws and group buys. It was always active, and it was my best source for first-hand information. Scrolling through the chat history, I found what I was looking for. What are they doing? They've already looted almost every apartment in buildings 1, 2, and 3. Isn't that enough food? Are they going to keep going? Haven't you noticed? They're going in order. They're probably going to clear out the entire complex before they stop. This is insane. Just because they're alive, everyone else has to die? We have to call the police. Someone did. The cops came, they ran. The second the cops left, they came right back. And somehow they found out who called and killed that whole family. I frowned and kept scrolling. About an hour ago, I found this. Oh God, they're in building 8 now. I hid some food. I hope they don't find it. But I bet I'm not the only one. Let's hope. I hid some too. I pray they don't find it. It's useless. They found the food I hid in the bathroom ceiling. These guys aren't human. They have knives, axes, even a gun. I don't know if the gun is real. Building 8, I muttered to myself. I closed the app and immediately switched back to my security camera feed. My apartment is in Building 8. There's no food there. Are these guys going to let Kevin go when they find nothing? If not, well, don't blame me if I can't help but laugh. Sure enough, after just half an hour, a group of people knocked on Kevin's door. When the door opened, the face of the leader was familiar. Thinking back, I realized it was the delivery driver. Kevin obviously recognized him too. He pointed at the man in disbelief. Without a word of hesitation, the man swung his blade and chopped off Kevin's right hand. Ah! I screamed along with Linda in the video. Kevin collapsed in pain, clutching his severed arm and scrambling backward, mumbling what sounded like pleas for mercy. I cranked up the volume on the feed. Let me go, he was saying. Please let me go. The leader asked him, why should I? I remember your place. You don't have any food. Why should I let you live? I can work for you. Money. I have money. I can give you all my money. The leader sneered. It's the damn apocalypse. What the hell am I going to do with money? I need food. If you have some, you live. If you don't blame me for what happens next. Suddenly, Linda threw herself at the leader's feet. She hugged his legs and begged, save me. Kill him. Kill him. The man found this amusing and laughed. You want me to kill him? Why? He killed my son because he had no food. And he ate him. The leader and the men behind him all sucked in a sharp breath. They stared in disbelief. A guy in the back said, the world just ended. We're not at the eating people stage yet. If you're not afraid to die, you can still go out and buy stuff. He didn't mention that you'd probably get robbed on the way. But when Kevin heard Linda's accusation, he roared back, like you didn't eat him too. You ate just as much as I did. Now that the meat's gone, you're crying over a pile of bones? You're disgusting. The leader hadn't expected to walk into such a grotesque scene, just looking for food. He looked at Kevin again. You really do have the face of a heartless bastard. And this woman, she's not your wife, is she? Kevin and Linda both froze. No, she's not. Do you know my ex-wife? Ex-wife? The leader's voice dripped with sarcasm. You think I'm stupid? Where is she? Don't tell me you killed her too. We're divorced. Really? I don't know where she is. She took everything from the house. If she hadn't, we wouldn't have ended up like this. Ending up like this is your own damn fault. What's it got to do with anyone else? You're divorced, so she should be dead to you. No, wait. It would be better if she were actually dead. Kevin shrank back until his back hit the coffee table, with nowhere left to go. No. You can't kill people. We don't kill people, the leader said. We never kill people. He gave a signal to his men. A few of them stepped forward and beat Kevin and Linda brutally, breaking both of their legs before leaving. Watching the two of them lying on the floor, wailing, I was lost in thought again. Who is that guy? He's so familiar, but I just can't place him. Ding. A message popped up on my phone. Hey, I just stopped by your old place. Did you get divorced? Where are you now? Do you have a place to stay? Looking at the familiar chat history, I finally remembered who he was. This young man had been in an accident while working as a delivery driver, and I had passed by and saved him. It was a bad crash. His intestines were literally spilling out, and I was the one who pushed them back in. We added each other on a messaging app after that, but we never talked. We'd just nod at each other if we happened to run into each other on his routes. So was he getting revenge for me now? It probably wasn't entirely for me, but no matter the reason, I was grateful for what he did to Kevin and Linda. Yeah, we split up. I'm back at my parents' place. Why were you at my apartment? Just passing by. Sis, you've got food, right? The weather's bad. Try not to go out. I do. You be safe too. I closed the chat and went back to the camera feed. In the short time I was texting, Linda, despite her broken legs, had managed to crawl up, fill a pot with water, and started boiling Kevin's severed hand. You rotten bitch. Get that out of there. I need to get it reattached. Linda gave him a vicious smile. You should worry about staying alive first. The wicked were getting what they deserved. I lost interest and put down my phone. The blizzard continued for several more days, and the first floor was completely buried in snow. The village head's broadcasts came several times a day, reminding everyone to stay warm. He even made a point to call every senior in the village at set times each day to make sure they were still alive. I had to admit, in a time like this, to still be worried about others, the village head was a good man. A few more days passed. By the time the snow reached the second floor windows, the outside temperature had been holding steady at over 50 below for a while. In that kind of weather, even with a stove going inside, it was still unbearably cold. But luckily, every household was well stocked. With a stove in the room, an electric blanket on the bed, extra thick pajamas, and several blankets, it was manageable. That's how it is in the South. You can't build heated brick beds like they do up north, so you just have to tough it out. But just when we thought things couldn't get any harder, the water and electricity suddenly went out. We were all completely cut off. The only comfort was the village head's 3 daily phone calls. After another 3 days, his calls stopped too. We knew his phone must have died. My dad actually joked about it. That's because he uses one of those old school phones for seniors. It can last 3 days. A smartphone would have been dead in one. My mom asked worriedly, the snow is already up to the second floor. Can this little house hold up? We just have to go up and shovel the roof every day, my dad said. As long as the snow doesn't get too thick up there, it'll be fine. 5 more days passed like this. When the blizzard finally reached the third floor, it started to taper off. At the same time, the water and power came back on. A few moments later, a loudspeaker started broadcasting a message outside. I hurried to the third floor roof deck with my binoculars. It was a drone, carrying a speaker playing a recorded message. Attention residents. The disaster is not over, but the situation is improving. Due to extreme conditions, travel is impossible. We urge all residents to practice self-rescue. We will also be airdropping supplies to various locations to provide immediate relief. Please believe that the government will not abandon any of its citizens. Please hold on. Dawn is coming. The government's words of encouragement were always the most effective. Knowing that the people in charge hadn't forgotten us, we could finally breathe a little easier. The days didn't seem quite so hard to bear anymore. I could even munch on snacks while binge-watching The Legend of Zhen Huan to pass the time. When I got tired of the show, I'd take out my binoculars and scan the horizon for any supply drops. I never thought that this idle habit of mine would end up saving our entire village. I put down my binoculars and rushed inside to get my dad. I pointed him in the right direction and handed him the binoculars. See, they're coming toward us, right? I think those are the troublemakers from the next village over. Coming here at a time like this, they must be here to steal our supplies. To risk going out in this weather, I can't think of any other reason, my dad agreed. He immediately called the village head. Without even hanging up, the village head heard what was happening and went straight to his own rooftop. Sure enough, in the distance, a group of men were using wooden planks to slowly make their way across the snow toward our village. My dad said into the phone, "Sir, this is the first group. We have to scare them off properly. If word gets out, we'll have endless streams of people coming." I know, but we can't get out there either. What do we do? I thought for a moment and said, "Sir, use the broadcast system. Scare them. Have your son download a gunshot sound effect on his phone and play it through the speakers. If they think we have guns, they won't dare to do anything. But we don't have guns. What if they want our guns and decide to attack us instead? Then someone's going to have to bleed. What's the alternative? Handing our lives over to them?" The village head considered this for a moment and made his decision. Hello. The 4 men on the planks on the east side of the village. Yes, I'm talking to you 4. Do not move any closer. Turn back immediately. Otherwise, in these extraordinary times, don't blame us for not being polite. The distance was too great for the village head to see their reaction, but my dad and I were watching them closely. The 4 men hesitated for a moment, then continued to move forward. My dad immediately reported back to the village head. "They're still coming." The village head's voice boomed over the broadcast system. "You little bastards, are you looking to die? Get back now." But the 4 men seemed to be provoked and started moving even faster. Finally, a loud bang echoed through the air. Everyone froze. I'll say it one last time. Go back. My aim isn't great, and I can't hit you from this far. But if you get any closer, I can't guarantee anything. Sure enough, fear made the men retreat. The broadcast ended. The 4 men were gone. I couldn't help but laugh. The village head is pretty good at bluffing. But after an incident like that, no one could afford to be complacent about safety. A rotating watch was immediately established to protect the village. Maybe it was because the days were so boring, but I found myself thinking about Kevin again. I had assumed that after all this time, both of them would be dead. But to my surprise, he was still alive. Of course, it was only Kevin. Linda was now in his cooking pot. I shook my head in disgust. It's true what they say about the wicked living long. The man has a strong will to live. With only one winter coat, he managed to survive at 50 below. A malicious smile spread across my face. I decided to add some fuel to the fire. I unblocked him and sent him pictures of every meal I had eaten recently, all at once. The next second, a video call from Kevin popped up. "Chloe, where are you? Why do you still have food?" I replied, "Why wouldn't I have food? You know I've always liked to stock up. Where are you now?" "I'm starving to death. Can you come get me?" I smiled at him, my voice firm. "No." After a 3-second pause, Kevin asked, "Chloe, you knew I was cheating all along, didn't you?" "No. One was my husband, the other my best friend." My natural trust in them meant that before that disastrous vacation, I truly had no idea they were together. It wasn't until they moved into my home and feasted on my body that my hatred reached its peak. Maybe that's why I was given a second chance. I walked through the house with my phone, the video call still active, all the way to the kitchen. My mom was cooking. One pot was stewing pork knuckles, another was pan-frying cabbage dumplings. On the counter next to the stove sat 2 freshly cooked vegetable dishes. Because the cold kept things from spoiling, my mom would cook a huge batch at once, enough for our family to eat for 2 or 3 days. The meals were simple, but they were a world away from what Kevin had. The sight of it was enough to make him lose his mind. "Chloe, save me. Are you at your family's house? Please come save me. I'm going to starve." Kevin was sobbing. "I'm begging you. I'll never cheat again. I'll be a good husband to you from now on, okay? A good husband? After this disaster is over, who knows where you'll be? Do you even have a life left to live?" Delusional. But I wasn't angry. After showing off, I mocked him to his face. "In your dreams." I hung up and opened the camera feed again. It seemed I had really pushed him over the edge. He knocked over the pot he was cooking with, but it tipped back and splashed all over him. To vent his rage, he smashed things around the house for a while before picking up the kitchen knife and hacking away at what was left of Linda's body. He hacked at it until the area was almost unrecognizable. Then the knife slipped from his hand, flew up to the ceiling, and came straight down, embedding itself in his shoulder. Yikes! Even I sucked in a breath at that. But as for the person on the other side of the screen, I wasn't interested anymore. This evidence is more than enough to put you away for good. Whether you live or die now is up to you. Before dinner, I told my parents the news. They were happy for me. He might not be dead yet, my dad said, but with all the evil things he's done, his life from now on will be worse than death. He'll be in prison forever. He can never wash away his sins. Of course, my mom added, if he dies, I guess you could say he got lucky. With Kevin no longer on my mind, I focused all my attention on the disaster. It had been 2 months since it started. That was a long time, long enough that even with our stockpiles, people were starting to run low. We copied the 4 troublemakers and used wooden planks to slide across the snow, delivering the government's airdropped supplies to every house. At a time like this, the villagers had to stick together to survive. As if the heavens had finally opened their eyes, the heavy snowfall from the day before began to lessen. It got lighter and lighter, and after 2 more days, it miraculously stopped. Without the blizzard, the government airdrops became more frequent. But to everyone's surprise, the temperature continued to fall, reaching an astonishing 70 degrees below zero. We live in the south. The coldest it usually gets here is around 20 degrees Fahrenheit. A temperature 10 times colder than that. I can't even imagine how people in the cities, without the resources we had in the countryside, were surviving. Another week passed like this. The fog in the air began to clear, the dark clouds scattered, and the sun finally showed its face. The temperature started to rise. The nightmare we had been living through seemed to be heading in the right direction overnight. When the temperature climbed back up to 4 below, the younger villagers, organized by the village head, started the task of shoveling snow. It wasn't a government order. It was just so the paths would be clear, so neighbors could visit each other. The incredible thing was, after nearly 3 months of hardship, during which countless people outside had died, not a single person in our village was lost. When the government rescue teams arrived, they were shocked to hear this. After learning what the villagers had done during that time, they gave special commendations to the village head and my dad. After that, society slowly returned to normal, and people's lives got back on track. Once the roads were fully cleared, I drove back to my old home and asked around to find out what had happened. Kevin hadn't died. Because he was wearing a thick coat, the knife hadn't gone very deep. But he had been too scared to pull it out, so he had lived with it stuck in his shoulder for a long time. When travel resumed, the police, who had received the report long ago, arrested him immediately. I went straight to the police station and told them about the cameras I had installed, giving them the login information. Now there was truly no escape for Kevin. Because we hadn't finalized our divorce within the 30-day period, the proceedings were automatically voided. As his legal wife, I inherited the remaining 7 million plus of his lottery winnings. After handling everything, I returned to my family home. This life, I just want to be with my parents and live out the rest of my days in peace. The end.